Man, we were up 6 at the half.
Right there.
Third quarter a little different.
Yep.
Fourth quarter, different conversation. I just want your opinion about what we saw for them coming out of the game.
Well, coming out of the gate, I thought they did all the things right, especially in that first half.
Yeah.
Third quarter, I thought that, that's when things kind of went awry. Fourth quarter, they go on a 17-5 run to get back into the game. That was huge because that showed resolve from a young team that was essentially out of it, that fought their way back. And in fact, to wrap this game up, I'd say it really came down to the points in the paint.
Indeed.
That's where the Bucks really took advantage, getting some offensive rebounds, second chance opportunities.
Points in the paint differential to the Bucks' favor, 50-34 to Tony Massenberg's point. I want to bring in Chris Miller and Drew Gooden, our in-game announcing crew. Guys, I want to get your opinion on the newest Wizards, mostly particularly the veteran side. So Chris Middleton and Marcus Smart. Guys, both of them really wanted to go out here and show what they had, but I want your opinions from your analytical eye, Drew.
Right now, we know what Marcus Smart's going to bring. He's going to bring tenacity on the defensive end, just previous defensive player of the year, shortest one by far in NBA history. So we know he's going to bring that to the table. Chris Middleton tonight, I don't know if he's going to be your primary scorer down the stretch, or do you go back with Jordan Poole? Because tonight they're going to have to coexist any given night on the same floor every night, if you ask me. And tonight, Jordan Poole just didn't look like himself. Only 5 3-point attempts where he went 0 for 5, 3 for 11 from the field, 11 points. Chris Middleton, first game in the uniform, was solid. You got to remember, you got to knock some of this rust off. You got to know the plays, start getting adjusted with the terminology here and his teammates and knowing their capabilities, and also produce in real time. So you have some moving parts tonight, and the one that I saw that stuck out to me is, does Jordan Poole shoot that last shot? It was Chris Middleton that had 2 or 3 opportunities to either tie the game or go up one. So that is, to me, is what stood out. And how do you fix that going forward? How can those two guys coexist at the same time? And you got to learn that quick.
I thought it was interesting. They had Jordan actually, I don't know if he was the decoy on this, but he's sprinting in the backcourt with 5 seconds to go. So I was curious about that. But for Chris Middleton and Marcus Smart, Drew and Tony, you both know this. It's jarring when you get traded, and it takes time. Obviously, from a personal standpoint, you've got to move your family and uproot them and come to the district. And now you're playing in games where you've had, 2 practices since the All-Star break. So I was really impressed with what Chris Middleton was able to give in that amount of time. Marcus Smart, typical Marcus Smart, he gets cut, he's tough. You know what you're going to get from a defensive standpoint. I think it's just going to take time, like a lot of these teams that made trades and getting into the buyout market and getting people incorporated into your program. These are 2 veterans that are established in the league now coming into a program where they're developing youngsters. There's 2 things going on at the same time. These are veterans that want to win, and you're also trying to teach these young players how to win. So that's going to be kind of interesting in the final 27 games of the season from my perspective.
From my perspective, Chris, I agree with you. When I look at Chris Middleton, now let's think back historically who Chris Middleton has been. Chris Middleton has been a closer on a team that features an MVP in Giannis Antetokounmpo during his time in Milwaukee. But he was clearly, during that championship run, he was the guy who would close games and played a pivotal role in their success. Now, he's also a guy who's, over the course of his career, has averaged more than 19 to 20 points over the course of his career. That is who he is. What he's battling right now is coming back from injury, the rust that accumulates with that because of the time off, and also being in a new system, as Drew alluded to. You don't know the plays, you don't know the city, you don't know, you know what I mean? Like, you got a lot of things going on that can affect you on the basketball court when you get traded. So I thought, with all those things in consideration, that he did a great job tonight coming in, not unwilling to take that last shot and being the guy that he's historically been. And I'm with Drew as far as, like, the question that you ask yourself now, do you have 2 closers? Because you've got Poole and Middleton now, and how do they coexist? I think that's actually a good problem to have.
It is indeed. And, Drew, I'll leave you guys with this question. When you think about the integration of Middleton and, of course, Marcus Smart, what is the number 1 priority to making that transition smooth as we look down the back part of the season?
Making sure that these young players know and get the big picture. They're veterans. They know exactly what they're signed up to do here as older players, veteran leaders on this team with a ton of experience. They just need to teach. They can continue to teach. You can figure out whatever business stuff you need to figure out this summer. But as of now, they're in teaching mode. And if they have opportunities to be in it late in games, to close out games like we saw Chris Middleton tonight, so be it. But don't forget the focus. Your role here is veteran leadership to the T, and this is a team that desperately needs that.
I think there's two people that are going to benefit from the additions of Middleton and Smart. I think Bub Carrington and Smart is a perfect combination. It's like Johnny Gill and Stacey Lattisaw. If you're old, you know what I'm saying. But I think that's going to be a really good blend of teaching Bub how to play defense because he already has the competitive spirit. But going back to what Tony and Drew were saying about Middleton and Jordan Poole, figuring out down the stretch of this season who's closer A, closer B, taking turns with that because both of them can be closers in games towards the end of the season.
Guys, thank you very much for the insight. Chris, I see you snuck some music in there because you're ready for the concert.
You know, I was interested because you guys asked us to come on the post-game show, and y'all know T.I.'s performing,
I
right?
know, that's why
we know.
I was going to stall you out real quick. Go ahead and enjoy the show. I appreciate the love. Chris and Drew, as always. Safe travels to Orlando, by the way, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. We're joined now by Megan McPeak, our sideline reporter for your Washington Wizards. Megan, the question transitions to you when you're thinking about the young guy by the name of Keyshawn George, especially defensively. Your thoughts on what you saw from Key tonight?
I mean, the easiest answer is a heck of a game on the defensive end. When you have to contend with a guy like Giannis at different points, you got to contend with a guy like Kuzma because we saw him on him at different points with, cross matches and switches and whatnot. Because depending on who was on the floor with him, who was guarding the other one, they had the switch ability. Him and Bilal can switch. They have that ability to do that. But down the stretch, he came up with huge plays. Here did a great job of shouldering up and chesting up against Giannis, timing his jump well so that he could not get caught with the foul, but could time it to get the block. Then he ears switching here on Green, strips it on the exact next possession after fouling Giannis out of the game. Then he, has to deal with Lopez. So his switchability in different situations has been so huge, and the growth from him on the defensive end has been nothing short of impressive. But I think from a standpoint of not worrying necessarily about the offense falling too much for him, but just zoning in and locking in defensively, because Tony, you played in this league. Sometimes, as good as you can be on both sides of the floor, sometimes what the coach needs from you on one night is to dial in, lock in, and just, hey, I need you to keep this guy in front of you and don't let him get his average. Do what you need to do to try and make it difficult, and I thought he did a phenomenal job when he had those assignments of making it difficult. If they make the shot, tip your cap. But he did, in my opinion, a phenomenal job tonight on the defensive end.
I'm in total agreement with you on that, Megan. And one of the most difficult things for a rookie to do is to be productive outside of not scoring points. That's a tough thing because when you come into this league, basketball is all about putting points on the board. But once you get to the professional level, you will have coaches sit you down and say, hey, listen, don't worry about your scoring. That's going to come. I need you to do things like rebound, assist, play defense, all the things that don't necessarily get glorified in the stat sheet or make the highlight reel. Those are the things that are sometimes a difficult transition for young players to make. And so to see Keyshawn George tonight not have a great shooting night, but still be so productive rebounding-wise, the defensive effort that he gave tonight, I think was unbelievable. And when you consider how many different players he was guarding, that truly shows you potentially what he can be as a defensive player in this league as well.
And Megan, to his point, I'm thinking about the fact that Keyshawn, if he were a sophomore in college, you know where I'm going with this schedule that he would have played through. Now he is coming off the back end of what is an all-star break for him. How beneficial were those quote-unquote days off for Keyshawn and his development looking at this part of the season for him?
Well, the interesting thing, I don't know if you guys saw it, but I know I saw it. That kid was back in the lab down at the U getting in some work. So he didn't just, rest, recuperate, and have fun in the sun wherever he was. He went and he got back in the lab and he put in work. So it was really good to see, some posts of him during the All-Star break, getting in the lab, getting in the work. But for me, I'm so impressed with the fact that coming into the season, coming into his career, at the early stages, he had trouble with fouling. We've talked about it. He has said it himself. I know it's been an issue for me. And I would say the last probably maybe 8 games before the break and now tonight, you saw him doing a much better job of keeping the hands out of the cookie jar, walling guys up. I mean, that last couple of possessions against Giannis specifically, like I go back to that. If you guys in the control room can rerun that highlight, specifically the one of him fouling Giannis out when he was defending him, he played textbook defense on Giannis. And Giannis, you guys know how hard he is to guard, especially when he goes north and south. East west, it's a little different, but north south, he is one of arguably the hardest guys to guard. He squares up. He gets in front of him, and the biggest thing for me, Tony, the feet, the puppies, they moved east and west. He beat him to the spot when it came to the defensive movement. He was beating guys to the spot with his feet and keeping his hands out of the way so that the official could see, I'm not using my hands, I'm all body. You got to call the foul. It better be the right call because you're not going to get me on a hand check.
And that's difficult to do. It's one thing to slide your feet. That's difficult, especially against a guy like Giannis, to move laterally and still be in position to keep him in front of you. It's another thing to also have active hands and have great anticipation to the point where you can anticipate where the ball is going to be and know when to reach. And that's the thing that I've seen him improve a lot. He knows when to reach now versus earlier in the season, he was getting caught with his hand in the cookie jar.
Indeed, keep your hands out the cookie jar. We know that. Megan, I got one final question for you. When I'm thinking about this being the third and final time that we've seen the Bucks this year, obviously in different iterations of the Wizards each time that we've seen them. But what do you think is the overall, the number one lesson that they can take from this matchup that they've learned from facing this Bucks team this year?
I think in every single one of the matchups, they've battled. They've battled really well against Milwaukee. It might be one of those, you know how some teams, they just match up well and you match up well against them? I think this is one of those situations where, you know, they do a good job of rising to the occasion. And I think when you go from game 1 to game 2 and now to game 3, they learned a little bit more about themselves. Obviously, being, 50 games into the season, you have a little bit more experience, especially with a younger team. So guys kind of know how to figure it out. And then to Chris and Drew's point throughout the game broadcast, as much as teams are having to reassess the young guys in Bub, Keyshawn, Alex, Bilal, because they're adding to their game and getting more consistent, these guys are doing the same thing and like, okay, that first matchup with these guys, this is how they got me. The second one, I did this better. And now in the third one, I'm not going to let him get X, Y, and Z. And if he does, it's because he had to work his butt off in order to get that. And I thought there was those 3 incremental jumps from game 1 and now the final matchup with Milwaukee. And really and truly, when you're talking development guys, I think that's all you can ask for if you're Brian Keefe. How are we getting consistently better in the incremental looks that we're giving them, and what are we doing to get there, and how do we look in that final matchup? And I think at least against Milwaukee in the 3 games, you can chalk this up as a successful learning phase for this team.
Indeed, Megan, we appreciate that. I want to let you go because I know you too have desires to see Mr. Harris from Atlanta, Georgia, a.k.a. known as T.I. Megan McPeak, sideline reporter for your Washington.
So, y'all know T.I.'s performance,
I
right?
know, that's why
we know.
I was going to stall you out real quick. Go ahead and enjoy the show. I appreciate the love. Chris and Drew, as always. Safe travels to Orlando, by the way, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. We're joined now by Megan McPeak, our sideline reporter for your Washington Wizards. Megan, the question transitions to you when you're thinking about the young guy by the name of Keyshawn George, especially defensively. Your thoughts on what you saw from Key tonight?
I mean, the easiest answer is a heck of a game on the defensive end. When you have to contend with a guy like Giannis at different points, you got to contend with a guy like Kuzma because we saw him on him at different points with, cross matches and switches and whatnot. Because depending on who was on the floor with him, who was guarding the other one, they had the switch ability. Him and Bilal can switch. They have that ability to do that. But down the stretch, he came up with huge, huge plays. Pierre did a great job of shouldering up and chesting up against Giannis, timing his jump well so that he could not get caught with the foul, but could time it to get the block. Then he is switching here on Green, strips it on the exact next possession after fouling Giannis out of the game. Then he, has to deal with Lopez. So his switchability in different situations has been so huge, and the growth from him on the defensive end has been nothing short of impressive.
The game unfolded as a tale of two halves, a stark contrast between a dominant opening and a turbulent close. The Wizards entered halftime with a 6-point lead, executing their game plan with precision. Their defensive intensity, ball movement, and shot making were on point, allowing them to dictate the pace early. However, as the third quarter commenced, the tide shifted dramatically. Milwaukee came out with renewed energy, making key adjustments that disrupted Washington's flow. By the fourth quarter, the game took on an entirely different complexion. The Bucks went on a crucial 17-5 run, a momentum surge that epitomized their resilience. This was a young team that, by all accounts, could have folded but instead clawed their way back into contention, demonstrating grit and determination. At the heart of Milwaukee's success was their dominance in the paint. The numbers told the story. 50 points in the paint compared to Washington's 34. The Bucks capitalized on second-chance opportunities, leveraging offensive rebounds to extend possessions and create high-percentage looks. That differential proved to be a decisive factor, underscoring Washington's struggles to protect the interior. The conversation then turned to the Wizards' newest additions, veteran presences in Chris Middleton and Marcus Smart. Both players arrived with something to prove, eager to establish themselves within their new surroundings. For Middleton, the transition presents challenges beyond the stat sheet. He's integrating into a new system, learning new terminology, adjusting to unfamiliar teammates, all while shaking off rust from time missed due to injury. Historically, Middleton has been a proven closer, a key figure in Milwaukee's championship run alongside Giannis Antetokounmpo. He has averaged over 19 points per game in his career, demonstrating an ability to deliver in clutch moments. However, in this game, he found himself in a balancing act with Jordan Poole. Who takes the final shot? Who steps up in critical moments? That question loomed large as Poole struggled, finishing just 3 for 11 from the field and missing all 5 of his three-point attempts. The reality is that these two must learn to coexist, and that process needs to happen quickly. Marcus Smart's impact, meanwhile, was exactly what you would expect. The former Defensive Player of the Year, the shortest in NBA history to earn that title, brought his trademark intensity, toughness, and defensive tenacity. He took hits, played through contact, and set the tone defensively. But for both Smart and Middleton, the transition goes beyond basketball. Being traded mid-season is a jarring experience, relocating families, adjusting to new environments, and immediately being thrust into high-stakes competition. With just 2 practices since the All-Star break, the margin for error is thin. Washington now faces a unique challenge, integrating seasoned veterans into a roster brimming with young talent. This is a team simultaneously trying to win games and develop its future core, a delicate balancing act for head coach Brian Keefe. The leadership of Smart and Middleton will be critical in guiding young players like Bilal Coulibaly, Johnny Davis, and Keontae George. These are experienced players who understand the league's nuances, and their primary role is to teach. Their ability to mentor, while still performing at a high level, will be pivotal over the final 27 games of the season. A standout performance came from Keontae George, particularly on the defensive end. Tasked with guarding a rotating cast of difficult assignments, including Antetokounmpo, Chris Middleton, and Brook Lopez, George held his own. His defensive discipline has evolved dramatically, especially when it comes to limiting unnecessary fouls. Early in the season, foul trouble was a recurring issue, but over the past 8 games, his decision-making has improved. His ability to move laterally, anticipate offensive moves, and contest shots without fouling was on full display, particularly in the closing moments when he forced a crucial turnover and later blocked Giannis in a textbook defensive stand. For a rookie, being effective without relying on scoring is a difficult adjustment. Yet George has embraced that challenge, contributing in ways that don't always appear in the box score. As the season progresses, Washington must continue to refine its late-game execution. This was the third and final matchup against the Bucks, and while each game featured a different iteration of the Wizards roster, there were clear signs of growth. From Game 1 to Game 3, the team displayed a better understanding of how to counter Milwaukee's strengths and exploit weaknesses. That level of incremental improvement is precisely what Keefe and the coaching staff are looking for. Ultimately, Washington's young core will benefit immensely from the presence of Middleton and Smart. Their roles extend beyond stat lines. They are here to instill winning habits, foster accountability, and set a standard for professionalism. As the season winds down, the Wizards will face crucial decisions about their long-term direction. But for now, the focus remains on learning, competing, and building toward a sustainable future.